Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, "As for me, I am establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the domestic animals, and every animal of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark. I establish my covenant with you that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth." God said, "This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth." God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh on this earth." Now, if you recall, way a long time ago, when I preached last time, we discussed this idea that our faith is inspired by generations past and generations future, and is fueled by the moments from our personal experience when God showed up over and over again in our lives. We use these things to move us forward across bridges of doubt and uncertainty to places of belief. Now today, we are confronted with this passage that actually established a covenant between God and humanity, a sign that reminded Earth's inhabitants that God remembers. And once again, this lectionary passage is sort of dropping in on us in the middle of a story, so let us just recap for context. I know you love my recaps almost as much as I love giving you the recap. Okay, so hop back to Genesis 6. The people had been fruitful and they had multiplied, and there's all these people everywhere, but God is looking at them and shaking her head like, who are these ghouls I gave birth to 5 chapters ago? They're not being nice to each other, they're arrogant jerks. And verses 5 say that God saw the wickedness of humankind was great in the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of their hearts was only evil continually. And God was sorry that God had made humankind on the earth, and it grieved God to God's heart. So then God says, "I will blot out from the earth the human beings I have created, people together with animals, creeping things, and birds of the air." Not sure what they did wrong. "For I am sorry that I have made them." But Noah found favor in the sight of the Creator. Well, holy guacamole, God is mad. So let's just pause here and remember that every ancient Near Eastern religion had some sort of flood story, right? So we know that some sort of grand flood did occur, and we know that people in the time of Genesis weren't exactly scientists. And so we know this story is probably conveying a deeper message, probably several deeper messages. And we can imagine that the authors interpret this huge and unexplainable event of their time through this story as God's doing, as a judgment from a creator God on a people that were not living as the image of God in which they were created. And what I find very interesting in this passage from chapter 6, verse 6, God was sorry that God had made humankind on the earth, and it grieved God to God's heart. Now, from the author's perspective, humanity had the power to cause the Creator's heart to grieve. So chapter 6 continues. God comes to Noah and says, these people are bad. They are violent. They are corrupt. You know, I didn't create these people in my image of love and community to be violent and corrupt. And you know, they could have been. They could have been violent and corrupt. We weren't there. We don't know. But the irony is not lost on me that God creates people in God's image, which we believe to be love and community. And then God gets violent in this passage. A genocidal flood is blamed on God due to God's judgment. God says, I'm going to wipe them all out, all of them. But then tells Noah, you, however, you're all right. I'll save you and your family. So it seems to me that this author has taken an unexplainable, at that time, event and created a story in which God's character was based on the fallen and broken image of humankind. The violent outburst of the God character in this story is much more reminiscent of the people, the violent and corrupt people. So in a way, the author judges humanity as worthy of this disaster as a way to explain the event itself. Just a note. I digress. So God comes to Noah and says, I want you to build an ark. And then God goes into all of this detail with Noah. I guess that's the carpentry thing in there, foreshadowing, about how he's going to make the ark. And God says, you're going to bring your family and two of every kind of animal you know so they can survive. Then it's going to rain and rain and rain. Kind of like the snow here for the past few weeks. It's going to rain a lot. 40 days and 40 nights, it's just going to rain. You're going to be in the ark with your family. You're all going to be okay. So the text says that the waters swelled on the earth for 150 days, but Noah and his family were okay. I mean, as okay as a family can be stuck together in quarantine for that long. I mean, in a boat. So after these 150 days of board games, binge watching their favorite animals, and cooking sourdough bread, the waters finally started to abate, and after a while, God sends a wind to sweep over the earth, and the waters subsided. Finally, Noah and friends get off board. Noah then builds an altar and offers some sacrifices, and God's like, oh, that smells good. And God said in God's heart, I will never again curse the ground because of humankind. For the inclination of the human heart is evil from youth, nor will I ever again destroy every living creature as I have done, as long as the earth endures. Seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. So now, after all this, they're off the boat, and God's like, welp, that was a successful flood, so I'm going to need you to be fruity again and multiply. And I'm going to establish a covenant with you. And we finally made it back to the passage for today, where God does indeed establish a covenant between God's self and God's people, that the earth and its inhabitants would never again be destroyed by a flood from God, signified by the rainbow. And the rainbow is not just a sign of God's own remembrance of this covenant, but a reminder to humanity that, oh yeah, God does remember. I'm sure that some of you have certain places and things that are symbolic to you. They remind you of particular people or events in your lifetime. If asked, I'm sure most of us have songs or places or pictures that may remind us of those who we love and that have passed from this life to the next. For some, it might be a flower or a ladybug or a specific type of bird. As much of each of our lived experience differs, so does what we identify as symbols in our lives. And some of us, and I would venture to say a lot of us, tend to find ourselves feeling loved and or receiving signs of well-being from the other side. I know that every single person that I have loved that has passed away, I have had a significant moment in which I have felt their presence, and at times miraculously happened upon something or someplace that symbolized my relationship with that person. And I would venture to guess most of you know what I'm talking about here. How lucky, sacred, and special it feels to know that you're loved. And your loved one from the other side is full of well-being, is thinking of you, and wants to say, hello, I'm still here, I'm still with you. I wonder, do you think the divine is trying to say these things to us? If so, how often? Do we recognize it? For how much we think we know about this Noah's Ark story, we really don't know a lot about this Noah's Ark story. But what we do know is that the author believed that the violence and corruption that was taking place in the world caused the heart of God to grieve. And we know that after the flood destroyed every living thing, there was a desire for life to thrive again. And a sense that this choice to move forward, and in this, something beautiful was found at the place of rain and light to be the symbol of a covenant, a symbol of peace. Rodney S. Sadler Jr. says the act at the end of the flood account of the deity hanging the rainbow in the sky would have been understood in that day as the act of a warrior who hangs up his war bow, symbolizing the end of hostilities. So let's take a look at this bow. What do we know about rainbows? We know that as light enters a water droplet, slowing down and bending as it goes from air to denser water, the light reflects off the inside of the droplet, separating into its component wavelengths or colors. Then when light exits the droplet, it makes a rainbow. Light and water, water and light together create a beautiful sign, a sign of promise, of relationship, a creation of something new, a commitment to peace. We often talk about the storms of life as a metaphor, and of course we know that gray weather, as often experienced here in Rochester, can cause a biological reaction. Lower mood, frequent fatigue, even depression or seasonal affect disorder. But we've also all heard the sayings, brighter days are around the corner, or sunnier skies lay ahead. These metaphors, of course, point to the notion that yes, the sun's light in our eyes, the vitamin D absorbed, these things affect our moods, uplifting a lot of us to more energetic states, a more positive outlook, better sleep rhythms and whatnot. But the magic really happens when one part of the sky, full of dark clouds, stormy clouds, while in some other part of the sky, the light from the sun is flooding in. The darkness has not yet passed, but the promise of light is present. And while even as it is easy to often doubt that the sun could ever really come out again, We know that the storm's reign can and do exist alongside of the light, causing the bright variety of color and diverse beauty to have space to shine forth. To promise a new day, to declare that yes, this too shall pass. I wonder, honestly, how many of us feel stuck in the darkness, so to speak, drenched in the waters of the storm. It's hard to look up in these times, to dare to open our eyes and look for a sign. I remember during a particularly difficult and stressful time in my life, when I was in seminary, I came home to my apartment one day to find a glorious winged creature just hanging out on my welcome mat. I had never seen anything quite like it. It wasn't a butterfly, and it didn't move when I entered or exited the apartment, but just hung out there, being big and beautiful. And when I looked it up, I discovered that it was a Luna moth. And one of the things that stood out was its coloring. You see, green and purple are my favorite colors. So when I came and when I went, and a day or so passed, and I came back home to find that my Luna moth had brought another friend over. Another beautiful winged creature. This one, an interesting print. Again, I was baffled at why these moths were hanging out only at my door. They certainly grabbed my attention, and I stopped and I looked and I beheld the wow. And then a few more days went by, and lo and behold, a third friend decided it wanted to chill on my door for a while too. This one was spotted. It was such a strange phenomenon to me. I didn't have any flowers or plants out there, nothing that would attract these creatures. I was intrigued. And I looked up the symbolism of this Luna moth, and it seemed to match, where I was in my life at that point, of course. But beyond that, for about a month or so, there were these beautiful moths just coming and going from there. And eventually it tapered out. I think that the Creator is frequently seeking to speak peace to us in vivid colors, in interesting creatures, in starry nights, and even through stormy seas. It seems that God has something just for us, just to let us know, hey, I'm here. I'm with you. I'm always here, and I'm always with you. And here is something wonderful and beautiful just for you. Sometimes, of course, the storm has been going on for so long that we have forgotten to look for the beauty. Perhaps we have stopped expecting it. And even if it was there, we might just rush on by, barely giving it a glance and not really seeing it. The rainbows are there to promise the coming sunshine, to promise that yes, this too will pass and something beautiful can come out of this darkness. Something new can be born out of this despair. If we are brave enough to look for it anyways, and if we are willing to expect that beauty despite the pain. It might just show up for us just when we need it, appearing out of seemingly nowhere, but really a little light mixed with a little water and born before your eyes is a reminder of God's commitment to you and your relationship and love for God. And stop and be in this space of peace and mutual remembering. You see, when we receive signs from loved ones from across the veil, they can be personal, a connection that meant something to you and them in the context of your shared relationship. If we only believed God was so personal with us, If we only knew how much God's heart longs to reach us, to say, don't forget. You were created to be in relationship with me. Don't forget that. And I promise, I will not forget you either. Not even on occasion and not even once in a while, but as frequently as we look for it. The phenomena which God uses to speak to us are right there, showing themselves to us just at the right time. I wonder, what is your sign from the divine? Amen.